Greetings. We are here again, back in the lab here. Run Tell That in the house. And we got, again, special guests. And as we say all the time, all our guests are special guests. But again, we going back in time. And somebody we had the pleasure to have on a journey with us right here in the port city, in the seaport, Dr. Umar Johnson, our brother. We say to you, peace and blessings, brother. Peace and love.
Peace and Pan-Africanism. Glad to be back in Savannah.
That's right. And wonderful. And then guess what? Yo, check this out. We got GSU in the house. GSU is in the house. GSU is in the Black Book Club from GSU, Georgia Southern University. We got Brother Justin, Sister Khadija in the house. Greetings to the family. Glad to see y'all.
Hey.
Happy to be here.
And then, of course, the producer, again, the headliner for all of that, for all things relevant media, our Black media, bam, Julius Hall.
Good evening, everybody.
So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. And so to Brother Umar, we're going to ask you this question. Dr. Umar Johnson, this is what we start the people. Who are you and who are your people?
Yes, sir. Doctor of clinical psychology, therapist, blood relative, great author of the book.
I think you're breaking up, Dr. Johnson.
Breaking up?
Yes, sir.
You know what? I didn't link up the Wi-Fi because I thought I would have been all right. Give me one second. Let me see. Sometimes the Wi-Fi causes more problems than it's solving these hotels. Let me see.
All right.
You're coming in clear now.
I'm going to try it out, though. Okay, log in. Connect.
Took that water down the wrong way.
You okay now?
Mm-hmm. So keep each of them.
Yeah.
They
must
dropped
have lagged out or something.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is any better.
What did you put in there? Put the wrong one in there.
Are you still there, family?
Yes, we're here.
Julia, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Can y'all see me now?
No, sir, we can't see you, but we hear you.
You can hear me.
We can't see. Everybody's whispering.
So now I just called me. So now
start camera. What about?
Okay.
See me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. But as I was saying, doctor of psychology, author of a couple books, currently working on the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy up in Wilmington, Delaware, which we hope to be ready by this coming summer. And we want to thank all of you.
Is it frozen now?
Yeah.
Can y'all see and hear me?
We hear you and see you, but you're frozen on the screen. I guess your Wi-Fi in the hotel.
Might not be good. I could take that Wi-Fi off. What y'all think?
Yeah, take the Wi-Fi off because it's not working.
All right.
We'll get it all set in a minute. That gives everybody time to tune in anyway.
Is it frozen?
He's taking the Wi-Fi off.
Let me do this myself.
We'll get it right in a minute, people. Y'all just hang in there. Share. What we got to talk about today is going to be straight fire.
You know.
How we doing now, family?
You sound better.
Yeah, sound better.
Right.
Dr. Torre will be back in a second. Go ahead and you can start over.
Oh, sure. Doctor of Clinical Psychology, certified school psychologist. I do most of my work in the community. Certified school psychologist, former principal, author of Psychoacademic Holocaust, as well as a new book that'll be with me tomorrow at the Arts Center, and that's Black Parent Advocate: The Art of War for Public and Charter Schools. Pan-Africanist, the Garveyite, former Minister of Education of Marcus Garvey's UNIA-ACL, the largest Black organization in modern history that gave us the red, black, and green flag that everyone knows about. And I'm just happy to be back in Savannah to raise the consciousness and educate the parents.
And that's exactly what we want to get into, Doc. Why are you in Savannah? Why are you here, brother?
Well, outside of the major cities, I don't frequent many of the non-major towns around the country. Not because I don't want to, just that the big cities, I always get requests to come speak in the big cities. I don't get many requests to speak in the smaller cities. And so I try to make it my business to visit as many of the quote unquote non-market cities as I possibly can. Now, Savannah has all the history as it relates to Georgia, but of course, Atlanta gets all the attention. So I'm always, in Atlanta. This is only my second visit to Savannah, which, kind of, it just don't sound right. But glad. And hopefully this won't be my last. Won't be another 6 years before I return.
Absolutely, because when you came before, the people were motivated, the people were enthusiastic, because again, this is what they've been seeking. And so, with regards to that, what are the things that motivate you, inspire you to do the work that you're doing?
Well, in the third grade, living in North Carolina, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. In the fourth and fifth grade, I had Black history class back home in North Philadelphia. In the sixth grade, I learned that I was related to Frederick Douglass. So I guess it's safe to say that before I left elementary school, my life path was already set for me.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so, go ahead. You added some more?
I was just saying, wow. Frederick Douglass is relative to Frederick Douglass. Amazing.
But again, I'm kinsman Frederick Douglass and my 4 times great grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey, they grew up together. They spent their childhood on Tuckahoe Creek. If you read any of Frederick's autobiographies, he talks about cousin Stephen. Well, cousin Stephen is Stephen Henry Bailey, a Civil War veteran, and my 4 times great grandfather.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Go ahead, Dr. Torrey.
All right. And then with regard to something I threw out the folks that why it's important for us to have an African, say, framework, an African foundation.
Because your culture is your immune system. Your culture is your political immune system. It is your social immune system. It is your spiritual immune system. It is your psychological immune system. Without culture, how do you make sense of the world? Without culture, how do you live? How do you survive? How do you organize? How do you exist? You cannot survive without an immune system. So I would say politically, economically, socially, spiritually, intellectually, you can't survive without culture as well. Those who don't have culture are doomed to imitate someone else's.
And that's a good segue to this one right here. I'm going to ask this question of what is mental captivity and how does that impact African people, Black and brown people?
Post-traumatic slavery disease, as I referred to it, or the psychological residuals of slavery, is probably the single greatest internal issue that we have. Our single greatest external issue is white supremacy, but our single greatest internal issue is post-traumatic slavery disease. And I say that because mentally ill people don't make good leaders. Mentally ill people don't make good soldiers. Mentally ill people don't make good servants. So until we heal ourselves, we will never be able to organize, mobilize, or galvanize our people towards any critical liberation struggle, because mentally ill people are a risk on the field. You don't know how they're going to act. You don't know when they're going to self-destruct. You don't know against their own best interest. All mentally ill populations have 2 things in common. Number 1, the inability to perceive reality as it is. I don't care if you have depression, bipolar, borderline, anxiety, schizophrenia, low self-esteem, alcoholism, drug. All mentally ill people have trouble understanding reality as it is. You can come up to somebody who smokes 50 blunts a day and they'll tell you not addicted. You could go to a person who is drinking 100 cans of beer a day. He'll tell you he's not an alcoholic. Why? Because he can't perceive his reality accurately. And attached to that is the other issue all mentally ill people have. In addition to not being able to perceive their reality accurately, they are also in denial of their problem. This is a very big issue with us because Africans in America, we don't like to admit we as white people. We don't like to admit we are afraid of white people. We don't admit we are psychologically enslaved. We don't like to admit we are addicted to the of European civilization. How do you, if you don't admit that problem exists? And that is why as a race have not made much progress since Dr. King's assassination, because we don't even want to admit we're doing bad. So how can you do better?
So,
yes.
So Doc, how about the educational systems here? Is it harmful to our kids, or do you see it where it's helping our kids, or do we need to separate and teach our own?
The public education system of America, which I refer to as the miseducation machine, in my opinion, it is a form of academic and psychological terrorism. That's what's going on in those schools. They are academically and terrorizing our children. They are creating zombies who are loyal to the implementation and perpetuation of the European social order. There is nothing more symptomatic of Black people's denial and self-hate than the fact that we are a $1.7 trillion people. Let's round that off. We are
okay. Yes, sir.
We're the richest group of Africans in the world, 10th richest economy on the planet, and we still send our children to our oppressors to be educated.
Wow.
And we trust them with regards to that.
And don't see anything wrong with it. And we are in such denial that when you talk about how destructive and abusive and oppressive the American public, private, charter, parochial, independent school movement is, Negroes will point out a couple of success stories. They will show you the one kid who got a full scholarship. They'll show you the other kid who's at IT. They'll show you another kid who became a doctor, another kid who became an engineer. And all that is good. We're proud of those young people who survived despite the odds. But let us be clear. Every Black child in Savannah, Georgia should not be expected to overcome odds in order to be successful. White children are not expected. Jewish children are not expected to overcome odds. Only the Black child, because kids in her community don't love them enough to build their own schools for them. They're expected to deal with racism and still succeed academically. No child should be in a position, should be put in a position like that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Glad to see you, Sister Sonia. Glad to see you, Reverend Betty Jones. Glad to see you all here. And also now throughout this to you, Doc, what are the ways that we can gain independence and have solutions with regards to this trauma that our people are doing in the educational system? What are solutions that you see for us to gain that independence?
Okay, now, Band-Aids and solutions are totally different. A solution is a remedy.
Yes.
Will eliminate the problem forever.
Okay.
Is independent schools. There's no other solution except independent schools, period. Now, community control of the schools is a longer term Band-Aid, but it's still not a solution. Only if you control it can you determine the destiny of it. If you don't control the institution, you cannot determine the destiny of it. So the solution is independent schools. But in the meantime, until we have those independent schools, we have to fight like hell to protect our children in these public schools. And that begins educating the parents about their rights. My work as a school psychologist is to make sure parents understand what they can do and what they can't do. And one of the things I'm going to stress tomorrow night at the Cultural Art Center is how much parents need to stop being complicit in the special education hustle and the ADHD racket against our children. Black parents are voluntarily sentencing their children to special ed, voluntarily looking for ADHD evaluations, voluntarily seeking out medication because they don't understand that these things are detrimental to their child's long-term academic success because schools are misrepresenting special ed like a solution, misrepresenting Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, Cyclic as solutions. Those are not solutions. They will cause more problems than they solve.
Okay. And again, this is Run Tell That with brother Dr. Umar Johnson, along with the Black Book Club at Georgia Southern University and also Julius Hall. And we're going to just finish up a certain round, and then we're going to just open it up. We're going to flow with this conversation. But Doc, I ask this question of you also. How do we achieve liberation? How do you assess, how do we achieve liberation? What's the methodologies we need to get to liberation?
Well, first, we have to make sure everyone's definition of the goal is similar. Because for me, liberation is complete independence for African people in every major sphere of human endeavor. That's medically, hospitals, academically, we need our own schools. Economically, we need our own banks that serve the community. So when we talk, in terms of diet and nutrition, we need our own supermarkets and fresh food stores for the community. So for me, liberation is independence. But for a lot of Black people, liberation is acceptance. And so make sure we separate out who is fighting for acceptance in the white power and who wants liberation away from the white power structure. And we have to understand a lot of Black folks are not interested in liberation because liberation will automatically require accountability, responsibility.
Okay.
Those are the three most terrorizing words in the Black community. We do not like to hear the word sacrifice with each other. We don't like to hear the word accountability with each other. And we don't like to hear the word responsibility with each other. See, as long as you're integrating into someone else's reality, you're not responsible for nothing. All you do is participate. But what we fail to understand, participants don't have power. Participants don't dictate outcomes. Participants are not true stakeholders. The only thing you can absolutely dictate is that over which you have control. That's why I am for liberation, not participation.
All right. Powerful. Y'all heard it again. Dr. Umar Johnson on Ron Tell That. And so, Doc, one of the things you talk about educational systems. So can we got some folks out there right now? How can they start their own schools? What are some of the things that they, with regard to them starting schools? Because some of us have that fear about starting our own schools. What are some of the things you throw out there to just motivate that person to say, you can do this?
Well, in the new book, I have a whole chapter on homeschooling. Now, from a Pan-Africanist perspective, from a national perspective, homeschooling is a Band-Aid too. It's better than public school, but it's still a Band-Aid. And the reason I don't consider homeschooling a solution is twofold. On the one hand, most of our parents cannot afford to be home long enough to homeschool their children. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. They can't do it. Most of our kids are being raised by single mothers. They're not able to be home homeschooling their children all the time. So that's number one. And number two, from a liberation and a nation building perspective, one of the main things Black children have to be taught is how to work together. You can't do that with everybody homeschooling their child independently and separately from everybody else. Black people have to be taught to work together. You can't do that with a homeschool. And that's why, for me, homeschools are Band-Aids. They're not solutions. Solutions is when we school our children together and teach them unity, organization, and team building skills as a way of life.
All right, powerful. Yes, indeed. So, Sister Khadija, we'll throw out there. You got any questions for Dr. Umar Johnson?
Hi, Dr. Umar. I'm the vice president of Black Book Club, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I feel like the solution is to be separate, but how do we work towards that in like smaller? What smaller changes we could just make to move towards that?
Okay. Remember, your goal must always be progressive and not reactive. Mm-hmm. So the goal cannot be separation, because separation is reactive. We don't need to be proactive. So we say the goal is because we are already separated in the ghetto. We are already separated economically. They have the wealth, they have nothing. We're already separated politically. They make the do is accept those decisions. So Black people are already separate. The problem is we don't have an independent structure. We don't have an independent reality. So the goal is not, you're already separate. The goal is independence. His hospital, his bank, his school, his job. We need independence.
Okay. Right. Brother Justin, anything you want to share? Any thoughts with regard to Dr. Umar?
You mentioned before you spoke about the education system and how we need to educate our own. So I'll just ask, like, what book would you recommend to anybody who looking to like learn more about the history themselves? Like, I know me personally, when I really started doing like a deep dive into history, well, I've always been interested in history, but then more so like around like the political side of things. The first book I read was The Miseducation of the Negro, and then I read Kwame Toure's his biography, Ready for Revolution. So those are just like some books I recommend. So what books would you like recommend, or text would you recommend anybody looking to learn more and expand their own mind?
Well, Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, I think, is one of the greatest books ever written on the mental condition and the educational condition of Black people. Although he was an educator, not a psychologist, that was profoundly a psychological treatise. After that, I recommend authors more so than books, because most of the authors I recommend have written multiple books. Dr. Amos Wilson would be someone I would turn you on to. He was a fellow Garveyite psychologist like myself. I think he was the most relevant scholar of the second half of the 20th century. He has videos on YouTube, but you also want to get his books. He's written plenty of books, at least. So Dr. Amos Wilson is definitely someone you want to go to. Obviously, the Honorable Marcus Garvey. You want to read Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. You also want to read Garvey and Garveyism by Queen Mother Amy Jakes Garvey, so you can understand how the Garvey movement was the original mass movement of Black people in this country. Every movement after Garvey borrowed extensively from Garvey, but most of the subsequent movements took our people away from African consciousness and gave them a religion. Okay, so you want to study Garvey and Garveyism. You also want to read Race First by Tony Martin of the organizational and ideological struggles of Marcus Garvey in the UNIA. So you want your Garvey, you want your Dr. Amos Wilson, you also want your Dr. Claude Anderson, who's still living and breathing with us in the flesh. Read his Powernomics, read his Black Labor, White Wealth. You also want to read his Dirty Little Secrets books as well. So those are the folks I would turn you on to. Claude Anderson is Garveyite per se, but his philosophy and his approach is very much in keeping with that of Marcus Messiah Garvey.
All right. Great, Doc. Great. So, Brother Julius Hall, what do you have for Doc Umar Johnson?
Well, I got a litany of questions, and that's
We go one question at a time right now. We ain't got who's going on.
Dr. Johnson.
I got you all the time. Oh my God.
Dr. Johnson, I often tell our people, because it's frustrating, it's really frustrating to see us in the condition that we're in. And I often tell us, the people that I talk to, and on this platform, we have about 38,000 people watch us a month. And one of my biggest things is that our weakness is our division, and our strength can only be our unity. And I'm a realist. How long do you think it's going to take for us to come together and unify to understand the power that we possess?
One of the things that makes it so difficult, one of the factors that makes it so difficult for us to unify and mobilize, is we have trouble developing a sense of urgency. One of the things about us, we never develop a sense of urgency. And one of the reasons why we don't develop a sense of urgency is Black religion has given most of our people a false sense of security of what I call the spiritual insurance card. Every religion gives their followers a spiritual insurance card that says you don't have to do anything. You don't have to fight for nothing. You ain't got to struggle. You ain't got to do none of that Garvey stuff, that Black nationalism. You don't have to do none of that, because Jesus will come and fix it all. Muhammad will come and fix it all. And so we can never develop a sense of urgency, because buried deep within the subconscious of American African people is this belief that God is going to fix all of our problems for us. And as long as we have that conditioning within us that is a carryover from slavery, we'll never get our people to a point where they're ready to act now.
Wow. All right. Yes, indeed. So Dr. Johnson, why are you here, brother? Why are you in Savannah? What brings you to Savannah?
To motivate, to educate, to organize. To educate, to motivate is primarily that. I like to inspire. I'm told that I'm very inspirational, so I like to inspire people. When I travel the country, people stop me and they say, hey, you're the reason I started my business. You're the reason I went back to school. You're the reason I got married. I hear these stories all day long. And so even though the information, is what I thought was what people loved so much from Dr. Umar, but it appears to be the inspiration as much as the information. But make no doubt about it, my crusade is to crush the psychoacademic Holocaust, which is what I consider a 6-stage cycle that America has created to destroy every Black male in this country. And those 6 stages of the psychoacademic Holocaust are miseducation, special education, psychiatric medication, juvenile incarceration, psychological frustration, and number 6, premature extermination, whether that be black on black crime or police on black crime. That is what America is up to. And on the 5th stage of psychological frustration and alienation, black girls right now, our young teenage sisters, are the fastest growing suicide population in the United States. So we need our black women to wrap their arms around our young sisters, and we need our black men to wrap their arms around our young sisters. I will say this for the men's side: every black woman in this world needs a man who loves her unconditionally without any expectation of a sexual relationship. Usually, you'll have that with your father. Usually, you'll have that with your grandfather. Usually, you'll have that with your uncles, or you'll have that with your brothers or your cousins. But for a lot of our young women, they might not have their father. They might not have their uncles or their grandfather, their brothers or their cousins. So the men in the community have to step into those positions and show our young women that we can love you and be emotionally intimate with you as a support without any expectation of any sort of sexual favors in return. That's why so many of our young women are so isolated. They need masculine validation, but they can't get it because so many brothers don't have their lower chakras in check, that they can't provide our daughters with the support that they need without any type of a sexual expectation.
And that's absolutely being holistic. Again, people not understanding. And so, Doc, you're going to be speaking tomorrow in Savannah. And where will you be speaking? What's the time? So people out there who are listening, looking at the show right now, will be looking out tomorrow. Also, where can they come to check you out?
Everyone who's watching, we are inviting you to the Cultural Arts Center, downtown Savannah, Montgomery Street, tomorrow, Wednesday, February the 23rd. Doors will open up at 4 p.m. I will speak from 5 until 7, and I will sign books from 7 until 10. I hope everyone can make the lecture, but if you can't, you can still stop by from 7 to 10 after the lecture to get your book, have a quick, brief conversation with Dr. Umar. It is free. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to register. All you have to do is show up. We want the parents, we want the elders, we want the activists, we want the politicians, we want the corner boys, we want the criminals, we want the children, we want everybody. This is a conversation for the entire black community of Savannah, Georgia, and it's going down tomorrow on my second visit here to Savannah and my first since 2016.
And for the religious people out there, this is almost like, again, like your Jesus moment, like how you said Jesus going to the valleys, go where everybody else are on the streets. So now what's happening, we now got the brothers saying, we want all y'all to come out and check it out. Check it out. Because now the Black Book Club will have their own event going on tomorrow. But check this out. The rest of you can come and check Dr. Umar out on tomorrow. And so that's what we want to segue into this. What is your new book about?
Black Parent Advocate is a resource guide that's the part 1 is a that I've written to help respond to schools who make demands on parents that they don't agree with. So if they want your child in special ed, you don't agree, how should you respond? I give you the exact letter. All you have to do is produce it and change the name. If the school says we want your child on medication, you don't want them on medication, I give you the exact letter to submit to the school. If your child was evaluated and you don't agree with the evaluation, you have a federal right to an independent evaluation. I give you the exact letter. So the first part of the book is nothing but solutions, nothing but how to respond. Because most of my work as an advocate and a school psychologist is coaching parents in responding, how to write your letter, what should be in your letter, what law should you quote in your letter, take the emotion out of your letter. And so the first half of the book is giving parents all the letters they need to deal effectively with the school. And the second half of the book is teaching parents how to understand the documentation that they get from the school. I go through the IEP with them. I go through the psychological evaluation with them. I go through the behavior intervention plan with them. I go through the academic intervention plan with them. I talk about how to deal with behavior without medicine, another chapter on homeschooling. And there's also another chapter on how to conduct yourself at a school meeting. Because in my experience, Black parents don't know how to conduct themselves at these meetings. They're either too disconnected, too emotional and aggressive. You need to be balanced and you need to focus on what's going on in that meeting. So, for example, I tell Black parents in my book, like I'm going to tell them tomorrow on the microphone, you should never go to a school meeting for which you don't know the reason why you're coming. You don't ever go up to the school without having first found out what I'm coming in there for. And if the school tells you, you'll find out when you get here. You tell them, I will find out right now, or I will never. You're going to tell me right now what I'm coming to talk about, because they like to catch you off
All
guard.
right.
Schools deliberately want to catch Black parents off guard so they can force your hand to fulfill their agenda.
Oh yes, and that's it. And see, Doc, now I'm going to share this with you. I'm scared, Doc. I'm scared. These people right here, they're smarter than me. They make more money than me. Like I only got an 8th grade education. I dropped out of school. So
You know what I say to that? This is what I say to parents all the time. I am an expert school psychologist. I think I'm the greatest school psychologist that ever walked America. When I evaluate your child, I might spend a week evaluating your child. But guess what? With all my degrees and all my, you are the only person in that room who is an expert on your child. It doesn't matter how many degrees you got. It doesn't matter if you dropped out in 9th grade or 5th grade. Nobody knows your baby better than you. And if it don't sound right, if it don't feel right, then it ain't right. One of the biggest things I have to teach Black parents is assertiveness training. You have to be assertive when you're dealing with the power structure, because if you are not assertive, if you are not protective of your children, they will take advantage of you.
okay. So, Brother Julius Hall, we're going to actually do this. Put in the address, put it across the screen also, the banner. So, because Reverend Betty Jones need to know the address. It's a cultural center, the one that they built that nobody really goes to. But that's another story. City of Savannah builds a cultural center, but nobody goes to that cultural center right there across from the Civic Center. Reverend Betty Jones, you know the place, but guess what? It's across from the Civic Center. Nobody goes to it. And that's your money that's been spent. But anyway, we're going to move on. Julius Hall, also, go ahead, throw out the question again. What are your thoughts for Dr. Umar?
Well, Dr. Umar, like I said, I don't think you have enough time to answer all my questions, because I'm one of them brothers that I heard you briefly, but I was in a bunch of meetings tonight. I heard you briefly on Alicia's show earlier because she's a part of our network here. And I heard pieces of it because I was in, we have a lot of turmoil up here in the city right outside of Savannah called Pope Wentworth. But anyway, I am one of those people that stays on the church. I stay on the church's butt because I believe that they have an obligation to uplift the people. I believe that these pastors and these churches, especially these mega churches, have an obligation to try to do as much in the community as they can to bring us up instead of keep holding us down. I believe that they are part of the problem. What is your thoughts on the church and their responsibility and obligation?
They are a big part of the problem, my brother. You are absolutely correct. One thing we need to study more is how the church reinvented itself after the assassination of Dr. King. After the assassination of Dr. King, the Black church ran as far away from political agitation as they possibly could, and they reinvented themselves instruments of accommodation and instruments of agitation. The church is no longer an adjutant. The church is no longer an irritant to the white power structure. Instead, the church is now an accomplice to the white power structure. And I think some of this credit has to go to former President George W. Bush, the son, who actually made it possible for Black churches to qualify for federal funding. Because once they started giving out them shut up dollars out of Washington, D.C., you haven't found a Black church in this country, I mean nowhere, who has been on the front line of struggle tackling some of America's major issues. Every time I speak in a city, I always ask the question. I just spoke in Jackson, Mississippi. I just spoke in Shreveport, Louisiana. I just spoke in DeSoto, Texas. I said, can you name me a church in your that is at the front of the fight, not the back, not the middle, but at the front of the fight for miseducation, mass incarceration, gentrification, police genocide, access to wealth? Nobody yet. I'm going to ask the same question tomorrow here in Savannah. No
Right.
has been able to name a church that is fighting on behalf of the Black community. They are only interested in two things: money and getting you ready to die so you can go to heaven. If it ain't about money, and if it ain't about preparing you for heaven, then they're not interested in that. That's a shame, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the Black church will say, well, political agitation is not my business. Well, you lie, because the whole history of the Black church from 1619 until April 4th, 1968 was political agitation. We got our jobs through the church. We got civil rights through the church. We fought the Ku Klux Klan through the church. We got buried through the church. The Black church was the one-stop shop for all things African. And now it is only the one-stop shop to get ready to die and to give up your money. The Black church takes things from Black people that we cannot afford to waste. One is money. Two is time. And three is emotional energy. The Black church drains you of your money, it drains you of your time, and it drains you of your emotional energy that could be better spent on real, tangible struggles and solutions. The Black church is the biggest economic exploiter and thief in the Black community.
Wow.
And that's it. That's it. And so we understand and we put it out there so you all are hearing, and we are consistent. This is not anything we're picking on anybody with regard to this. Is the truth that we all understand. So, Brother Justin, what questions you got? Any thoughts you got for Dr. Umar?
There might be a few exceptions, but it's not many, because everybody will jump up and say, not my church, not my church, not my church. Well, listen, I will concede that there are a few exceptions.
Yes.
Exceptions are far and few to be found.
Yes, indeed.
I have a question. I'm Kalia. I am PR of Black Book Club. And why is it that as Black people, we always feel like we need like some type of savior to come in and like help us or like guide us? Like, why don't we just have the urge to want to do those things? Like, why are we always looking up to someone to?
Great question, Princess. And I also want to say, I at Georgia Southern before. About 10 years ago, now that I think about it, I was there. You guys weren't there yet. But
you plan to be back?
Whenever y'all ready to have me back, I'll be looking forward to coming. But let me say this, Princess, to answer your question. I was looking for saviors. For one, we're too lazy to organize. People would rather have a savior that they can blame all their problems on than become a part of the solution themselves. Black folks don't want to hear nothing about no organization. Soon when you start talking about organizing for change, they want to run somewhere else. So that's number one. It's the best way to evade accountability is to have a savior. Number two, church, religion has conditioned us to believe change only come through a Messiah. So we approach our political problems the same way we approach our religious problems. So if you Christian, you waiting for Jesus. If you Hebrew, Moses. If you're a Muslim, it's Muhammad. It's always an individual sent from God to deliver his people from evil. The problem with that narrative is it's not relevant in the modern world. The world you live in is ran by groups of people, not individuals. The white power structure is a system. And if we are ever going to take it down, we must systemically organize ourselves. I do not endorse a single Negro at the top, because all it does is breed narcissism. Nearly every national leader we have in the country today is a cold-blooded narcissist who's not only ineffective, but they don't even want to be replaced. And they fail to recognize that the group knows more without them, and the group would probably be better off without them. The HNIC syndrome is one of the biggest problems in Black America. too many Negroes at the top who think they have a right to dictate policy for the race, and not one of them is willing to go to jail or take a bullet for anybody else in the community.
That's it. And again, that's it. And so, Brother Justin, any thoughts, any comments you have with Dr. Umar?
All right, so earlier when you spoke out of church, like how like in the past, I believe like religions were like really used, like a lot of resistance movements, both on the continent of Africa and South America, so on. They were based around religion. Like they used the religion, like with the Haitian Revolution, they used the natural spiritual religions to really boost them. How do I say this? Basically, what I'm saying is the backbone to a lot of resistance movements were religion. So how do you think that we can sort of meet them, like bring them there to get like, so you speak like the religious leaders about the black church. Mm-hmm. So how do you think that we can get that, basically get back to that, like bringing that back into the community, like bring it back with the people, really bolster the religion movement?
Yes, sir. Great point, young brother. Number one, you are correct. Most of our movements in the past grew out of the church and they were led by religious leaders. Mm-hmm. I would say, though, I would dare say that the time has come for that to end. Mm. Going forward, our leadership needs to be secular, not religious. And I'm going to tell you why. Black people, since that time, have adopted so many different spiritual creeds, so many different religious doctrines, that if you try to organize us under a single religion, it will not work. Religion today is more of division than it is a tool of unity. The reason the most honorable Marcus Garvey was able to organize Black people better than any other leader in modern history is because the Garvey movement was a movement for African people that did not have a religion. People tried to get Mr. Garvey to turn the UNIA into a church. They tried to get him to turn it into a mosque. They tried to get him to turn it into a temple, and he refused to do it. He said, this is a movement for African people. If you want to pray to Jesus, go to church. You want to deal with Muhammad, you go to the mosque. But when you come here, we are dealing with one thing and one thing only, and that is African liberation. I believe going forward, leadership needs to be secular. It needs to be non-religious. It's okay if they have a religion, but you should not build the movement on religion for 2 reasons. Number one, religion ain't got anything to do with black oppression. White supremacy has nothing to do with what religion you belong to. So why introduce a variable of division that has nothing to do with our solution? That's number one. Number two, we are too religiously diverse to try to force everybody into a movement that has one religion on the top. And number three, and this is probably the biggest reason, young people don't have a history of holding religious leadership accountable. And no people in the world have a history of holding religious leaders accountable. When you claim to be a minister, when you claim to be a preacher, when you claim to be a bishop, people don't feel comfortable asking you, what did you do with the money? What are you doing for the people? Because they have this cloak of mysticism that says they are a direct representation of Almighty God. And since religious leaders come in the image of Almighty God, communities don't do well holding them accountable. And that's why our leaders of the future should be secular, so we don't have trouble holding them accountable or asking them questions. Nobody's going to ask Al Sharpton no questions because he's Reverend Al Sharpton. Nobody's going to ask Minister Farrakhan any questions because he's Minister Farrakhan. Nobody's going to ask Jesse Jackson any questions because he's Reverend Jackson. And I'm not naming them to impugn them because I respect all three of them, especially Minister Farrakhan. But the point that I'm making is our Black leadership has been under a religious dictatorship for 400 years, and it's time to come out from under the church when it comes to Black liberation.
All right. Yes, Sister Terry Mobley, Sister Vanessa, Betty, Dr. Tanya Howard Hall, glad to have you on this segment of Run Tell That, which will be airing tomorrow also. But now I gotta say this to you, Brother Umar. I gotta say this to you. why we just can't get along? I'm just saying, why I could just I need to forget about that. Why did? Because I'm living for today. Why I just going to get along?
Black, two things. Number one, Black people do not want to be free. Not most of us. We want to be comfortable. And we are willing to sacrifice justice. We are willing to sacrifice equality. We are willing to sacrifice progress to be comfortable. Yourself, a youth account, a house in a white suburb, a white girlfriend, some Jordans, and a blonde weave, and you can do whatever you want to do to Black folks. So that's number one. Don't want to be free. We want to be comfortable. And number two, until we hate racism, hate one another.
That's a good point.
Yes.
We hate racism more than each other. Nothing will change.
Yes. So, Brother Justin, anything you want to throw out to Dr. Umar?
What do you want to say?
Okay, so that we have to stop being okay with racism. So how do we handle it when it is thrown to us? Like, how do we handle that when a white person, or any person is racist towards us? Like, what is
never emotional?
Never get
emotional. That's number one. We have to stop reacting to racism with emotion. Racism is a system. It is a machine. It does not bend to emotion. We have to respond to systems with organized systems of our own. So that's number one. Number two, we have to understand that a European culture, the written word is king, not the spoken word. So whenever something happens to you, you have to write it down, document everything. It's one of the things I teach Black parents. Where is your documentation? European culture doesn't function on a oral principle. It functions on a written principle, under the assumption that if it's written on paper, it's automatically the truth. It could be a bold-faced lie, but because it was written on paper, it will automatically be assumed to be the truth if your truth is not written down. We have to get into documentation. The whole legal world is based on documentation. We are coming from an oral tradition. Don't get me wrong. We are a writing people too, but we are oral tradition where I will honor my word that came out of my mouth, even if it's not on paper. That's not how it happens in America. They will lie to you with their mouth and then manipulate you on paper. We have to develop a written of protest. That's a mistake that we're constantly making. We're not documenting the things that are being done to us.
All right. Brother Julius Hall, what do you want to throw out there to Dr. Umar? Brother Umar. Since you got 11 questions, you shouldn't be wasting no time.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. My wife was talking to me a minute ago. But anyway, I got 1,000 questions. But if you need to go over a few minutes, then you can. There's no problem. The rabble can start late tomorrow. But Brother Johnson, another organization that I hop on a whole lot, and people will tell you, we started this platform because we were frustrated. You saw the intro earlier. We have over 20-something shows with 4 or 5 more starting pretty soon. This is a Black platform. You look up in the corner, this is Our Black Media. This is what we're trying to do to bring information such as this to our community. What is the responsibility of organizations like the NAACP? Where are they when there's things that are happening and they never stand up? All they do now is 2 things: collect money and party. That's all they do well.
And get white people elected. You forgot
in that too.
That's all they do. NAACP, the Urban League, the Congressional Black Caucus. They're nowhere to be found except when election time comes around. They beat the streets for the Black vote in the service of the white Democratic Party. That's all they do. They might as well just change their name to vote-getting institutions, because that's all they are about. There's no struggle on behalf of any of them. But we must be honest. NAACP, founded by Europeans. Urban League, founded by Europeans. And they are both heavily financed by Europeans. The hand that pays is the hand that rules.
All right.
Why you hate black people, brother Omar? Why you say that about the NAACP? You can't say that about the NAACP. You gonna talk about the church, the NAACP. You gonna talk about SCLC. You gonna talk about National Urban League. Oh my God!
I tell you like this: no people can be healthy when their institutions are sick. No people can be healthy
All right.
when their institutions are sick. We will only be as healthy as our institutions are progressive. Show me a dysfunctional people, and I show you a bunch of disorganized.
Okay.
Wow.
And that is real. And on tomorrow, doors open up at 4 o'clock at the Cultural Arts Center right on Montgomery Street, right across from the Civic Center. Again, the facility, as I have shared before, that has not been used, but your dollars have gone to that. Politicians have gotten you to jump into that. Your leadership in the city and county gotten you to jump into that. So it's not being used. But on tomorrow, it will be used. We're going to have our brother there, brother Dr. Umar Johnson. Doors open at 4 o'clock. And you heard what it, some of y'all heard. Some of y'all heard it. Y'all heard when it said that there's no charge. No charge. No charge. You'll be there and he'll be speaking from 5 to 7, giving the word, and he's doing it as a service to the people, being an agent of the people. Again, a vessel for the people with regards to our liberation. That's 5 to 7 on tomorrow. Then after from 7 to 10, also with regard to the book signing. So he has a book that's out right now to help parents who to navigate this complex system with regards to education. And so that's why I'll throw out to you, my brother, how can education be a tool of liberation for us?
Everything starts with education, but the education must be relevant and it must be critical. It cannot be a Eurocentric, dead information education. It must be an African-centered, living, breathing, revolutionary education. That's why at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy that we're currently renovating in Wilmington, Delaware, in addition to the required academic subject, we will be teaching financial science, military science, dietary science, nutritional science, spiritual science, and science of the black man, woman, and child. Education must be relevant to the lives of children, or children will reject education for something that they consider to be more relevant. Education has to be made relevant for our children. They are dumbing them down in these schools, and our children are responding by dropping out of the schools. I would never condone dropping out, but I understand that when a child can tell that this education is not preparing me for the real world, how can they stay? Most teachers are white women. You're expecting a black boy to accept emotional, psychological ridicule from somebody who does not care about them and has no natural stake in their future success. It is academic terrorism.
Wow. Dr. Torre, Dr. Howard Hall said you didn't ask her question.
All right, that's what I was about to get to that. Dr. Tanya Howard Hall is one of our great board of education representatives right here, a sister that's progressive, and I had saw it. Break down CRT, I had saw that. If you give me a chance, but y'all don't want to give me a chance. Y'all treat me almost like the little brother of the ATR shows. But again, so my brother, can you talk about CRT? What is that really about? What is that?
Well, it is an academic approach to the study of social science that looks at the role of race and racism in the history, development, and progression of all institutions in this country, including the founding of the country itself. It posits that the enslavement of African people and the dehumanization of African people and the marginalization of black people to this very day plays a central driving role in the evolution of justice, the evolution of the economy, the evolution of education, the evolution of real estate. You cannot deal honestly with America's social institutions, her political structure, or her legal apparatus without locating the role of race, racism, slavery, and the dehumanization of African people first. I agree with critical race theory in principle. I disagree in practice. If we want to teach black children critical race theory, there's a church on every corner and a community center in every neighborhood. Why are we waiting for white people's approval?
Okay.
Wow.
So, Sister Khadijah, Sister Kayla, y'all have any questions, any thoughts with regards to Dr. Umar, Brother Umar?
See,
I'm good.
the city of Philadelphia was one of the first that authorized African-centered history in the school. They get like a credit of it. It's not. I did not support it. I didn't go against it because I have a policy. I don't go against anything unless it's dangerous. But the reason I didn't support African-centered history, and I said this at an NCOBRA conference in Philadelphia when I spoke, because I don't think white people have any business teaching our children who they are or where they come from. Why do we keep, if these people are your oppressors, if they are your enslavers, if they are your enemies, why do you want them to teach your children who they are and where? Our children's interpretation of history and culture is too important, too critical to be put in the hands of outsiders. Some things you got to fight for. Some things you got to do yourself. And one of the problems we have as Black folks is we can't seem to make up our mind what we should be doing and what we should be fighting for others to do. We've gotten to a point now where we want white folks to do everything, include teach Black kids who they are and where they come from. You want somebody who don't give a damn about your child to teach them who they are and where they come from. Absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
But I'm American. I'm American. So.
Since when and according to who? Since when and according
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
when you walk down the band, nobody's calling you an American. I promise.
They say that they would argue that that's their ancestors, not them.
So, Brother Julius Hall, you got a question for
Wait, can I say something?
Go tell that to Breonna Taylor's parents. Go tell Mayor Pope's family. Go tell that to Sandra Bland's family. Go tell that to Tamir Rice's family, Trayvon Martin. Go tell that to Philando Castile and Alton Sterling and Eric Garner and every other policeman. Go tell their family that they were Americans.
Right.
And that was their ancestors.
Well, no, so my question would be, I believe now, like in this time we are in, I feel like there's like a lack of like connection with the continent, like compared to past times. Like, you know, when Mandela got out of prison and he went through Harlem, it was like a big parade. You know, it was a big parade. You know, everybody out there, you know, of all alike. You know, back in the '60s when Malcolm X was, excuse me, when Fidel Castro came to Harlem and then he spoke. It was a big parade. It was a big thing. So, how do you think like we can build those connections again to really bolster the like solidarity?
Well, we have to put African consciousness back into the minds of our children, and that begins at birth. Okay, our children are victimized by menticide from the day that they're born. When they come home from the hospital, we have white cartoons in a child's room, white cartoons, and then we put on the TV. Then we introduce them to white books, and then we Sunday school, and they get a white Jesus. So before the Black child even gets to kindergarten, his brain has already been whitewashed. So first of all, Black people have to embrace African consciousness, and they have to embrace the divinity of Blackness. As the late, great Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad said, he said, Blackness is consciousness, culture, and a connection to the great creator.
That's right. The cosmic connection. That's it.
Our Blackness. That's one of our biggest problems. We have become so colorblind that we can't even see our own pain.
Even I can admit
and what is interesting today in my very class, the African diaspora class, the one thing I talked about with folks, I talk being comfortable in the skin that you're in. And I discussed how if I wear, say, a booba, I wear something that's African, and I'm on the campus of Georgia Southern, I said that Black folks would not even look at me. They'll avert their eyes away from me. And then some people thought that I'm talking about because I want people to look at me. I'm like, it's not about people looking at me. It's about the fact that you can't, even something that's tied to Africa, you won't even look, you'll walk past me. I said, with Caucasians, I understand that. But I'm saying with you, normally, but I say if I got a baseball cap on my head, then you will look at me. I said, you're not comfortable in the skin that you're in. I said, oh, I said, the other thing too, if you see me with some, you find out my name is not Billy Smith, but it is Muhammad Shabazz, then it's like, you got an issue with that right there too. So I'm like saying, hold up, wait a minute. You're not comfortable in the skin that you're in. And that's what we got to battle. And that is right there. And so folks try to get mad. And I'm going to say this. Folks on the Statesboro campus in particular got upset that I'm saying it because they wasn't feeling. Other people said, one sister said, yo, what you're saying, that some black folks are anti-black. And I'm like, yo.
Most Honorable Marcus Garvey said we had more color prejudice inside the African race than we've ever had directed at the African race. I would even add to that, that when it comes to white people, black people are totally inclusive and obedient. But when it comes to black people, we are all about alienation and anarchy. When we preach integration, we're only talking about non-Africans because we do not try to integrate with each other. We talk about black, white people who move off the block. When the black family move on the block, they say white people move off the block. But guess what? You got Negroes who do the same thing. When the second black family move on the block, they move off the block. Our self-hatred. We got critical race theory. We need critical self-hatred theory because all problems in Black America stem from the fact that we don't want to be by each other or with each other.
All right. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So I'm going back around. So I've been trying to go around to everybody, give everybody a fair shot. So Sister Khadija, Sister Kate, y'all got any questions, any thoughts? Brother Umar?
I feel like a lot of black people feel like they need that leg up from white people. They try to keep around white people because you never know what opportunity they can help you with. I just wanted to know your stance on that.
Well, I'm a nationalist. I'm not an integrationist. Black people who think that they can work along with Europeans don't understand racism. They don't understand how white privilege operates. And they clearly don't understand how we've been manipulated historically by white folks to think that they care about us. We care about ourselves. So for a lot of those people, unfortunately, they're going to have to learn through experience that there is no progress through integration. There's no white person who has ever fought to eliminate white privilege, and there never will be. But black folks, again, coming from religious colorblindism, multiculturalism, and low racial self-esteem, we think the only way forward is through white inclusion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The only group who believes that. The Mexicans build by themselves. Arabs, Native Americans, everybody's building alone. Black people need white people. That is a psychological handicap that we can owe to slavery.
Okay. And one last question.
You can't be like Julius Hall trying to hog up. I'm trying to be fair.
wait.
I'm trying to be fair.
I'm trying to be fair. You just want to hog up the question. I'm trying to do a circuit. That's why I do a circuit, so everybody get a fair opportunity.
I just wanted to know about the N-word. And is that oppression with us, or is that just something that we are using to still oppress us?
Say that again, Princess.
The N-word, is the N-word really oppressive, or are we using it to still be oppressed by it?
It's both. First of all, we are the only race in the history of human civilization to fight for the right to refer to each other with a word that has been historically used to denigrate and dehumanize us as a people. No other people in the history of the world have fought to use such a disrespectful, disgraceful, derogatory term to refer to each other. We have taken it and made it a term of endearment for one another. It is an absolute disgrace that we have done that. And then when white people use it, we come to their defense and for their right to use it. Now, the question I ask when people say it's okay to use the word, what is the image that word conjures up in the mind of anyone who uses it. Do you think of a doctor? Do you think of a lawyer? Do you think of a husband? Do you think of a wife? Do you think of a leader? No positive image is conjured by the use of the N word. That word still means exactly what it used to mean. The only difference is Negroes are now comfortable with it. That's the only difference.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's psychological. So, Brother Julius Hall, you got anything?
No, I just want to make sure that everybody know that they need to come buy this book tomorrow. They need to come hear this lecture tomorrow. They need to support this brother because he's speaking truth. He's an advocate for the people. And brother, I've been following you for a while, and we hope you nothing but the best. Because if I had 10 of you here in Savannah, then I could change things. But right now, we're trying to build up to that, and we just hope you return and grace us with your presence some more.
And actually, that is Julius Hall's slick way of saying, Jamal, your show needs to be getting off right now. So that's a slick way. But just I'm gonna let you throw a question in there before we decide, because that's his slick way of saying, Jamal, your time is up right now. You ain't like the other ATR shows. Run tell that you're gonna have to run on off there. Go ahead, Justin.
All right, so we spoke about the education system and all. First off, I would say I know a lot of times I'm having conversations with people, and I'm giving an idea that's outside of what they've been taught. I spoke about the Democratic Party, during the election. I was saying they're gonna do the same thing, they have the same core political views, but people are like, no, that's not true. I said something. I spoke of how the U.S. funds a lot of imperialist wars and how they actually, whenever they go to these countries, they're not doing good. People say, no, that's not true. So what I'm saying is, a lot of these people, they have these things this propaganda really drilled into them from birth. So how do you think we can really get that out? What's the steps to building a new mindset with our people?
As powerful as the brain is,
Good question.
it is still a tool. And like all tools, they can be manipulated. And although the brain is the greatest instrument God ever created, it is still a slave to repetition. I don't care what you constantly tell somebody, and I don't care how high their IQ might be. Whatever you constantly feed to the brain, it will condition into the unconscious. And that is what that person will believe. Slavery was a psychological conditioning process. Domestic abuse is a psychological conditioning process. When you join the military, that is a psychological conditioning process. And when our children go to school every day, that is a psychological conditioning process. We can teach Black history to our children all day long. But if the public school has more access to their mind than we do, we will lose. The brain is not ruled by truth. It is ruled by repetition. And whatever it hears the most is what it will believe.
That's facts.
Yes, indeed. And Brother Umar, Brother Doctor, we appreciate you. Glad to see you back in the city. And again, the folks go out and check him out tomorrow. Doors open at 4 o'clock at the Cultural Center on Montgomery Street, between Montgomery and MLK. At 4 o'clock, doors open up. It is free. Hear him from 5 to 7, then all 7 to 10. Book signing, support him. As Brother Julius Hall said, support him and the book. This is Run Tell That. And so again, we're going to let you close us out, brother, with the words that you think our people need to have for us to advance and go forward. Dr. Tanya Howard Hall want to know about your thoughts on Kwanzaa. But Dr. Tanya Howard Hall, it might need to be asked on tomorrow. But again, our brother, give us the things that we need to do to advance as a people for our future and our liberation.
Well, number one, we got to organize. Number two, we have to educate. Number three, we have to separate. And what I mean by separate is we got to separate those who are serious about the work from those who are not.
Right.
Those who are optimistic about the work versus the pessimists. Because I'm going to tell you right now, we have a lot of revolutionary pessimists. People who claim to be conscious and for the liberation of our people, but they don't think we can win. And they're constantly telling Black folks that they're wasting their time trying to change things. We have to get them out the way because that negative energy can erode the foundation of even the most serious. revolutionary activity. So separate the pessimists from the optimists. And then you also got to separate the nationalists from the integrationists. We respect the integrationists and we can collaborate on certain things. But those of us who believe the struggle should be all black are going to have to be allowed to struggle with all blacks, and let those who want to be multiculturalists do that. Don't have to fight. Like I said, we can collaborate. But for somebody like me, I'm past the point of working with people who don't think black people can win by themselves, because everybody else is winning by themselves. Why can't we?
Exactly.
And my brother, we appreciate you, brother. Glad to have you. I'm glad to have everyone from the Georgia Southern University Black Book Club. Again, our brothers and our sisters, Brother Julius Hall, thank you for allowing Rontel that to go past the 57 minutes normally that y'all go and cut us off the air. Usually they just shut us down. They like, pip, we off the air. I like the other shows. And again, to our brother, glad to see you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Continue with the gospel, because again, we know we said Luther continue, the struggle continues. And we say it's the beautiful struggle because we know victory is ours. And so to run, tell that family, check us out again tomorrow with regard to this show. Spread the word, let people know. Check out, go to the show, hear everything, see everything, get the book, and then pass it on. We got to plant them seeds of change. Glad to have you all. Peace and blessings. Tapu Hotel.
At Georgia Southern.
GSU in the house. GSU.
We'll be in
West Side in the house too. West Side in the house. That's right.
Thank you,
West
Dr.
Side.
Umar.
West Side. And the best high school in the United States, Hershey B. Jenkins High School. Bam. West Side in the house.
Right. Wow.
Good night.
I like that.